Welcome to another deep dive, into the world of Vikings.
Oh, right.
Our listener is interested in learning about Egil Skallagrimsson.
Oh, yeah.
And our source, La Ballada de Egil Skallagrimsson, Guerrera y Poeta Vikinga, promises to take us, I think, a little beyond just, the image of the Viking raider.
Sure.
And reveal, some surprising depth to their culture.
Yeah.
I am fascinated by this idea of a Viking warrior who is also a poet.
Oh, yeah.
It almost seems like a contradiction.
Well, it might seem that way to us now, but in Viking culture, both martial prowess and artistic skill were highly valued.
Okay.
You see skald or poet historians held a very important position.
I see.
Their poetry wasn't just for entertainment.
Okay.
It was how they preserved their history, praised heroes, and even influenced political events.
So Egil's poetry wasn't just a hobby.
No.
It was really a powerful tool.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating is that Egil's talent was evident from a remarkably young age.
Really?
The book tells us she composed her first verse at just 3 years old.
3 years old?
3 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
It sounds like she was almost destined for greatness.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But this duality of warrior and artist was apparent very early on.
Okay.
At the age of 7, she killed her first man in a fit of rage during a game.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
Yeah.
7 years old.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Pretty intense.
It seems like she was a force to be reckoned with from the very beginning.
Definitely.
So tell me about her family. What was her upbringing like?
Well, Egil descended from a line of berserkers and seafarers.
Okay.
Now, berserkers were these fierce warriors known for their almost superhuman strength and frenzy in battle.
Right. Feared and respected.
Oh, yeah, feared and respected. And seafaring, of course, was in the very blood of the Vikings.
So it sounds like she came from a long line of strong and adventurous people.
Yes, definitely.
Did her family nurture these talents?
Her father, Skallagrim, definitely recognized her potential both for battle and for poetry. He saw the fire in her and made sure to cultivate it, understanding that both skills could be valuable assets in the Viking world.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if he had any idea just how extraordinary she would become.
It really does make you wonder.
Did she have any siblings?
Yes, she had an older brother, Thorolf, who was also skilled in combat.
Okay.
But the book describes Egil as having a more volatile and outspoken nature. Maybe even a bit more rebellious than her brother.
Okay.
Yeah.
That independent spirit probably didn't sit well with everyone.
Right.
Especially figures of authority.
Yeah.
I read that she had some serious conflicts with King Eric Bloodaxe and Queen Gunhild.
Yes.
What was at the root of their feud?
It wasn't just one single incident.
Okay.
It was a buildup of tensions, misunderstandings, and perceived slights.
Okay.
You have to remember, disrespecting royalty in Viking society was a grave offense.
Right, but Egil wasn't one to back down easily, was she?
No, she wasn't.
No.
She valued her freedom and her right to speak her mind, even if it meant challenging those in power. And unfortunately, her brother Thorolf ended up getting caught in the crossfire of this feud.
Oh no, what happened to Thorolf?
He was killed by the king's men.
Oh wow.
It was a devastating blow to Egil and really a turning point in her story.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It fueled her rage and her desire for revenge.
Right. I can't imagine the pain and anger she must have felt.
Oh, yeah.
How did she respond?
In a way that perfectly embodied her dual nature.
Okay.
He didn't just seek physical revenge. She channeled her grief and fury into both action and art.
Okay.
Egil retaliated against Eric's warriors, but she also composed powerful verses condemning the king's treachery.
So she was literally fighting back with both her sword and her word.
Exactly.
She wanted to make sure that justice was served, not just in the physical world, but in the realm of history and memory as well.
Yes.
That's incredible.
It shows a deep understanding of the power of storytelling and how it can be used to shape perception and immortalize events.
Right.
This act of defiance, however, forced her to flee Norway, becoming an outlaw.
So she went from a celebrated poet to a fugitive.
Yes. Quite a change.
What did she do next? Where did she go?
She embraced the life of a Viking raider, utilizing her combat skills to survive.
Wow.
Imagine her raiding along the coasts of England and Francia, a formidable warrior making her mark.
It's hard to picture someone going from composing poems for kings to raiding coastal towns.
Right.
It sounds like she was living a very dangerous life.
It was definitely a life of uncertainty.
Yeah.
But then comes another twist in her story.
Okay.
She ended up finding refuge with King Athelstan of England.
Wait, the enemy?
Yeah.
The English king?
The English king.
How did that happen?
Well, alliances in those times were often fluid and pragmatic.
Okay.
Rulers like Athelstan recognized and valued talent regardless of where it came from.
Right.
They understood that skilled warriors, and yes, even poets, could be valuable assets.
So her reputation as both a warrior and a poet It spread far and wide.
It had spread far and wide.
What did she do while under Athelstan's protection?
She put her poetic skills to work once again.
Okay.
She composed a drapa,
Uh-huh.
a highly stylized praise poem for King Athelstan.
Okay.
And this wasn't just any poem, it was a carefully crafted piece of political maneuvering.
Right.
Think of it as a verbal tribute designed to honor the king and secure his favor.
So she wasn't just a gifted poet.
No.
She was a strategic thinker.
Absolutely.
Who understood the power of words to influence and persuade.
Exactly. It demonstrates a deep understanding of the nuances of power and diplomacy.
Wow.
But despite finding a place of relative safety,
Uh-oh.
Egil's past would come back to haunt her.
Right.
Remember her feud with King Eric?
Oh yes, the king whose men killed her brother.
Yes.
What happened?
Fate, it seems, had a cruel twist in store for Egil.
Okay.
While traveling, she was captured by King Eric and sentenced to death.
This is unbelievable. First she loses her brother, then she's forced into exile, and now she's facing execution.
It seemed like her remarkable saga was about to come to a tragic end.
But I know she lived to an old age, so how did she escape this seemingly impossible situation?
This is where the story takes an even more dramatic turn, and where we'll have to pause for now.
Come on, you can't leave us hanging like that.
We'll delve into that incredible escape in part 2 of our deep dive.
All right, stay tuned.
Okay, we're back, and I am still trying to process this. Egil is captured by King Eric.
Right.
Talk about being caught between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
But I know she survives this, so the question is, how?
Yeah, that's the incredible part of this story.
Okay.
Egil, facing certain death, decided to gamble on the one weapon that she had left.
Okay.
Her poetry.
Oh, wow. What do you mean? Did she try to, reason with King Eric through verse?
In a way, yes.
Okay.
You see, she decided to compose what is known as a head ransom,
Right?
or a hofelassen in Old Norse.
Okay.
It was a daring move,
Uh-huh.
a plea for her life presented in the form of a skillfully crafted poem.
She bet her life on a poem. She did.
I mean, was that a common practice back then?
Not exactly common, but skaldic poetry held a powerful place in Viking culture.
Right.
Remember, it wasn't just about rhyming words.
Right.
It was about weaving narratives, preserving history, and influencing the present.
So she had one night to compose a poem that would convince a vengeful king to spare her life.
That's right.
What did she do? Did it work?
She pulled it off.
Wow.
Imagine the scene, Egil, under immense pressure crafting verse after verse.
Right.
The hofelassen wasn't just a desperate plea for mercy.
Uh-huh.
It was a calculated masterpiece, a testament to her talent and understanding of Norse culture.
So what was in the poem? How did she manage to sway King Eric with her words?
Well, the hofelassen brilliantly interweaved praise for Eric's lineage and past victories.
Oh, okay.
It appealed to his pride, his sense of honor.
I see.
It even contains subtle hints of flattery,
Uh-huh.
all woven together with a request for clemency.
So it sounds like she was playing a very dangerous game,
She was.
walking a tightrope between, praising him and manipulating him.
Yes, she had to demonstrate respect while also subtly reminding Eric of his own values.
Right?
It was a high-stakes performance.
Wow.
And the key to her success lay in understanding the very essence of skaldic poetry.
What do you mean?
Well, skaldic poetry relied heavily on kennings,
Uh-huh.
these metaphorical phrases that replaced common gowns.
Okay.
For example, instead of saying sword, a skald might say wave of Odin.
I see.
Egil used these kennings masterfully,
Right.
adding layers of meaning and imagery to her plea.
Wow, so she was using these poetic devices to kind of appeal to the king's emotions.
Yes.
And to his cultural understanding.
Exactly.
So what was King Eric's reaction?
Well, the sources tell us that King Eric was moved by the hofelassen.
Okay.
He was impressed by Egil's skill, her audacity,
Uh-huh.
and her understanding of his own legacy.
Right.
He granted her a pardon, allowing her to walk free.
Her words literally saved her life.
They did.
That's
It's
incredible.
an amazing story.
It really does challenge our modern perceptions of, Vikings as, just purely focused on brute strength.
It does. It reminds us that their culture was far more nuanced and complex than we often realize.
Yeah.
They valued eloquence and artistry just as much as martial prowess.
And Egil embodied that duality perfectly.
She did.
So what happened next? Did she go back to raiding?
Egil's story takes yet another turn.
Okay.
She lived a long life, which, as you know, was unusual for a Viking warrior, especially one who lived as intensely as she did.
Right?
Eventually, she settled in Iceland.
Iceland.
That's quite a change of pace from raiding and composing poems for kings.
Yeah, it is.
It sounds like she was finally able to find some peace.
Peace, perhaps. But life always has its challenges.
Right?
In Iceland, she raised a family and continued to compose poetry.
Okay.
But tragedy struck when her son drowned.
Oh.
This event had a profound impact on her and her later work.
Oh, that's heartbreaking. It must have been incredibly difficult to lose a child.
It must have been. Did this experience influence her poetry?
Absolutely. Her later poems are filled with the pain and longing of a mother who has lost a child.
Yeah,
They offer a glimpse into a more vulnerable side of Egil,
right.
a side that we might not expect from a fierce warrior.
It's a reminder that even these legendary figures experience, deep personal loss.
Yes,
And those experiences can shape their art in profound ways.
absolutely.
Did she stay in Iceland for the rest of her life? Did she ever return to Norway?
We'll delve into Egil's later years and the lasting legacy she left behind in the final part of our deep dive.
So Egil Skallagrimsson settles in Iceland.
Yeah,
A stark contrast to her earlier life as a warrior and a raider.
it is.
It makes you wonder how those experiences shaped her later years.
That's one of the intriguing things about her story.
Yeah.
She goes through these incredible transformations, but never loses that core identity as a poet.
Right.
Even in the relative peace of Iceland, her past continues to inform her work.
You mentioned she experienced a terrible tragedy when her son drowned.
Right.
How did that loss affect her poetry?
Her later poems take on a new depth of rawness
Yeah.
that reflects the grief and longing of a mother. You can almost feel the weight of her emotions woven into the verses.
Right.
It adds another dimension to her character, showing us that even a legendary warrior can be deeply affected by personal loss.
It reminds us that, these historical figures weren't just names in a book.
Right.
They were real people who lived and loved and experienced, a full range of human emotions.
Exactly. And it's through their stories, their poems, their sagas that we can connect with them on a human level.
So Egil continued to compose poetry throughout her life in Iceland.
She did.
Did she ever return to Norway?
There's no record of her returning to Norway. Her life in Iceland seems to have been focused on family, her community, and her poetry.
Okay.
And while there's no direct mention of a reconciliation with King Eric,
Right.
the fact that she was allowed to live a long life suggests that their feud eventually subsided.
It's amazing to think that she was able to find a sense of peace after such a tumultuous life.
It is.
What about her legacy?
Yeah.
How is Egil Skallagrimsson remembered today?
She is remembered as a true embodiment of the Viking ideal of the warrior poet.
Right.
Her sagas and poems are studied by scholars and enjoyed by readers all over the world.
Wow.
She's a testament to the complexity of Viking culture,
Yeah.
reminding us that it wasn't just about brute strength and conquest.
It sounds like she challenged a lot of our preconceived notions about Vikings.
She did. Egil's life demonstrates that their society valued artistry, storytelling, and eloquence just as much as physical prowess.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
We've gone from the battlefields of Norway to the halls of English kings, and finally to the rugged landscapes of Iceland,
That's right.
all through the lens of this one extraordinary woman.
And what's remarkable is that through all of these experiences, Egil remained true to herself.
Yeah.
A warrior who could wield words as skillfully as she wielded a sword.
When we first started this deep dive, I had a very different image of Vikings in my mind.
I bet.
But exploring Egil's story has really opened up a whole new world for me.
Good.
It's made me realize that history is full of these unexpected surprises, these hidden depths
Yeah.
that are just waiting to be discovered.
And that's the beauty of exploration, isn't it?
Right?
You never know what you're going to find when you dig a little deeper.
Absolutely. Egil Skallagrimsson's life is a perfect example of that.
It is.
She's a reminder that we should never struggle for, simple narratives or easy categorizations.
Right.
There's always more to learn, more to understand, more to appreciate about the past.
If you're interested in exploring more about Egil or Viking culture in general, I encourage you to seek out the sagas and poems that have been passed down through the centuries.
Right.
You might be surprised by what you discover.
Well, thank you for taking us on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
It's been an incredible journey.
Good.
And for our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and remember, there's always more to learn.